There we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you as usual from the Pinos Palace just west of Orlando, Florida. I am in the Xtreme Studios talking to RDV from the Great Midwest tonight. We were going to be going with something back to our regular schedule, a movie that you guys voted on. And in that time of us streaming live last, Val Kilmer had passed. So we wanted to go ahead and just kind of do a tribute video to him. Yep. Generally, we don't get too much into the politics or personal stuff about people. I know we did Gene Hackman a little while ago. But Val Kilmer is one of those guys that if you grew up in the 80s like me or the 90s like RDV, you're familiar with him and a lot of things. Yeah. Well, I mean, teenage years, right? So, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that, you go, oh, he's gone. And, you got a lot of movies here you put up on their screen, all that too. I'll just get with my initial thoughts and I'll have you do that. We just kind of freestyle it here, a little RDV.
Yeah.
I always thought Val Kilmer was a really good actor. I always wondered when he was young with Top Secret. I know the Zucker brothers, I think, did that one, the Airplane guys.
Mm-hmm.
I always wondered, was he just going to be kind of like a pretty, smart-alecky kind of guy? He's more like a likable Ryan Reynolds to me, at least the earlier version of it. So
they're both likable.
Ryan. Well, that's debatable, but the point
Not
is,
really.
Well, Val to me has a warmthness about him. He lacks a snarkiness that I think that Ryan Reynolds has. But the point being, somebody that's quick-witted, when they're talking. I think Val Kilmer did a really great job showing you how intelligent and smart he was, like with a Top Secret, because that's not easy to do, right? But then we see stuff like Heat and Batman and other stuff like that too. Tombstone, I think it's one of the short movies people are going to remember him from. Some are going to remember Top Secret. To me, those seem to kind of percolate near the top. Maybe Batman's up there. I don't know.
Top Gun and Batman Forever are probably his most famous ones, other than Tombstone.
Yeah, what sticks out for you with Val Kilmer the most?
First experience of watching anything with him was actually Top Gun. His portrayal of Iceman was great. I loved it.
Yep.
And then he goes into Batman Forever. And I was like, I didn't care for the movie, but I thought his portrayal of Bruce Wayne in Batman was actually pretty good.
Let me ask you this, because I know over on the Geeky Puppet Show where you guys do a lot of live readings and you review things and all that too. I'm not too familiar with a lot of the material. I've seen a lot of the different Batman movies, but you've got such a wealth of knowledge and of the background of it. What is it about his portrayal that people really, really like about Batman? Not necessarily like Val, but like him doing his Batman.
Well, the fact he wasn't George Clooney. George Clooney became more humorous. This is still more the stoic kind of serious Batman.
Okay, the adult-like version of it.
As I explained before, Batman Forever, the problem with that movie is that everyone except for Val Kilmer knew that it wasn't a serious movie. Because literally, Jim Carrey playing out of character Riddler when he should have been playing Joker. You had Tommy Lee Jones playing over the top, kind of weird Two-Face.
Mm-hmm.
You had Drew Barrymore in there as one of the henchmen or henchwoman for Two-Face, and it was just like, and especially when you watch that movie Val, A23 or A24, sorry, I can't remember what it was, but the documentary they did.
Yes.
And in his words, is his son's narrating, which I thought was clearly clever because he sounds just like him. He says it was his dream, everyone's dream growing up, reading comic books. Batman was everywhere, Adam West, all that stuff. And then you see Michael Keaton, he's like, then it's an honor to play the role. But they said as soon as I got into the suit, I hated it. I love the character, but I hated my experience because the fact that just being in the suit, you can't go to the bathroom, you take everything off, just pee, you're sweating, you're constantly drinking water to stay hydrated, you feel like you're going to puke, and it was just horrible. But yeah, I mean, as far as Val goes, as I said, like the top roles for me has always been like Tombstone, where he played Doc Holliday, Iceman, in Top Gun, which he reprised in Maverick, Batman Forever, Real Genius, Willow, and then the movie Saint. Those are my experience with him. Ghost of the Darkness, I watched about once. I don't really remember a lot of it, but I thought they were trying to keep the lions from attacking people while they're working in the railroad. Am I correct on that?
The lion had gotten a taste of human blood, so they were hired to whack them.
Yeah, the whack them. And then was it the other? I think the other one was 7 Years in Tibet. Was that him? Or am I thinking of someone else?
Don't recall off the top of my head if he's in that.
Yeah, because I remember a lot of those movies came out right around the same time, and I kept getting confused with that. But going back and looking at his IMDb stuff, he had some hits, and then other ones were kind of lesser. He did some voice work as Moses as God and Prince of Egypt was a really big production back then for animated in '98. Obviously he's in Heat, was a really good movie. A lot of people like. True Romance, he was in there as well. Thunderheart is another one I have not watched yet.
Okay.
Looking forward to watching that. The Doors, Jim Morrison. Some people didn't like that, and other people did like it. Yeah, I mean, Top Secret was his first film. Actually, looking at it, you know why it's confusing? Because I keep confusing him with Kurt Russell. But Kurt Russell was in all those Disney movies. And I keep thinking that Val was too, but I get them mixed up. But
yeah,
sorry, Brad Pitt. Sorry, Brad Pitt.
Yep.
The thing back then, when Val Kilmer was on screen in certain movies, you had Brad Pitt doing the same types of movies. The 90s was a lot of them were kind of like copy and paste with a different title, but especially the drama ones.
Yeah, I remember always liking Michael Douglas, even when I was a kid. I know my parents used to watch Streets of San Francisco, and I saw him in things. You and I have covered, I think, I want to say we've done both of the Romancing the Stone movies from the mid 80s here. But I had forgotten that he was in A Ghost in the Darkness because my mind immediately goes to Michael Douglas. But I remember really, really liking that movie, just the tension of it and everything else. I'm a sucker for when animals attack.
It was the lions. That's what I remember that movie for. Is just like the lions just picking people off in the tall weeds one by one, and these guys, only two guys with a rifle trying to pick them off. And I believe his character was he like a German? Was like a German soldier?
It's been forever since I've seen it.
I'm trying to think because there's so many movies that I watched in the 90s they kind of blend together. And I admit I have not watched Ghost in the Darkness since the 90s.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about Val that is easily apparent no matter what movies you've watched of them is that there are some actors that when you watch them, you're like, okay, it's Tom Cruise. It's all about Tom Cruise. Yes, we'll have competent people and all that, but the movie's about him. To me, whenever I watched a Charlton Heston film, I got the exact same thing. You're an A-lister or like that. I'm not saying Val isn't, but I felt Val could have been up there with like 4 or 5 nobodies, and it still would be a strong film. He wouldn't like outshine anybody, but he wouldn't be whatever. And I think that's great because I think your description of Batman's pretty interesting in that I remember going, I thought he was fine in it because I agree with you, Clooney. I'm going, what is this? It's not anything of Batman that I remembered. And for Val to come in there and take it seriously, maybe other people don't, whatever. It's just he could do whatever in almost any role, and he didn't feel like he was struggling. And that's not easy to do.
And you also notice a lot of his roles, he's calm, quiet, speaks like this,
Yes.
And that's the one thing you kind of notice when you're the Val Kilmer, whether it's in Heat or it's in Batman Forever, Top Gun, going into Tombstone, all in The Saint. They're all kind of like just kind of quiet, calm, collected, the cool guy, And then you get into like Real Genius. Was a completely different story. Real Genius, he was kind of more it's almost like not I don't want to say Ryan Reynolds, but more like an upbeat comedy guy.
Yeah.
And
almost like Jim Carrey energy, like in a way, but not totally slapstick, right?
Willow was the same thing. Willow was his self-absorbed character for him in the movie, and it's like so it was different for those Korean movies, but you start watching other movies. Same thing with he was in Red Planet. That was another one he was into. I never watched Wonderland, where he played John Holmes. I don't know if you have recalled anybody that's talked about it.
That's interesting. I want to say that I've seen it.
The porn star.
Yeah. Well, Val was obviously an A-lister, but to me, he was the kind of A-lister that wasn't going to be like Arnold, where you did huge, super big budget things and then slightly tweak it and all that. To me, he did a lot of different things. And honestly, this is going to sound maybe different from the way you're describing the type of films you like, perhaps. I like the ones where he's not smiling, when he's looking serious. I just, because to me, that's when I'm really feeling him in his delivery. Yes, he was good in Top Gun, but you know what? He's not even trying that. It feels like. But when he's got a more serious countenance to him or like that, I thought as he got older and matured, he could be one of those kinds of people. Like I could see him playing like the Michael Douglas types, the heavy types that are just calm, assertive, not in your face kind of energy, but you could believe what they're saying behind them.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was another movie that was really interesting, with him playing thief, but also is kind of gay. It's like I did not expect that as a role from him, because he plays all the macho, manly guys, and then we find out that in this role, it's like it was a complete shock, especially for a lot of people who were watching the movie. Didn't expect that, out of him. So yeah, the serious movies he did like that. Like I said, like I'd be Ghost in the Darkness. That another movie which got flack from some people, but I like it. Is At First Sight. That's the one where he's a blind man and the experimental thing. So
and he gets the vision. Yes.
Yes.
They play that kind of seriously, don't they? If I remember.
Yeah. I liked it, because it was basically, especially him playing in his roles, his emotional range. Being a guy who really didn't want to do an operation, but he met a girl, and she's like, "We could do this," and like they fell in love. And he's like, "Okay." So then, like they do the operation, they grow more in love, but then his vision starts to go, and then you see him getting angry, frustrated, and stuff like that. It was such a emotional movie. I liked it, but I heard over the years people were like, that movie wasn't that great, blah blah blah. I was like, dude, like it may have not been to some people's likings, but the reason I liked it because like the whole like mindset of that, getting your falling in love, getting your eyesight back, and then realizing you're going to lose your eyesight again. After all these years, you just got used to, being blind. Like that is horrific, and
you could play that for comedy, but they don't. And I like that.
Don't. Yeah. And like I said, same thing with Tombstone. He's playing Doc Holliday, who's dying of tuberculosis. And no matter what, he still, plays up, that they can still take down people. He bluffs and everything. And it's such a fantastic character to him. He was doing like Mark Twain stuff before he got his throat cancer.
Yeah.
He was doing plays like, he's big into Shakespeare and all that stuff, Mark Twain stuff. He really loved acting, and it was unfortunate, that his cancer came around and the throat cancer, and he basically almost died, and they had to cut out most of his vocal cords, so he only had a hole in and it's so his career is over. And as we've talked many times before about this, we even reviewed the Val movie.
Mm-hmm.
Him saying, it's like, I don't want to be one of those guys who's, who goes eventually is remembered for stuff he did years ago. He wanted to keep acting. And luckily enough, after that movie came out, he did get another role, a couple two. Was in Top Gun Maverick, but then he was also in a movie called Pay Dirt and a few other ones, Riptide. So he did his last movie was Top Gun Maverick. That was 2022. So he hasn't been doing that. So even now 2025, he kind of quit back acting again. He scaled it down, and I imagine his health might have been deteriorating too.
Yeah,
I mean, the guy died of pneumonia, so we already knew his health was compromised because the cancer treatments and all that stuff. So
yeah, I'm watching two people at the place I work at going through it, and it's just brutal what it does to your health. Fatigue.
And then on top of that, you get the depression. Luckily, this guy had support of his kids. He went through a nasty divorce during filming Dr. Island Moreau. And while he was in there sweating it in the jungle where they're filming stuff and getting bit by mosquitoes and and having to deal with the angry drunk Marlon Brando, his wife calls him, says yeah, we're getting divorced. In the middle of it, it's and he's it just devastated him, and he got depression because while he had problems with the marriage, while there is also even before Dr. Moreau, he was doing The Doors and the stuff because this guy would get into character. He'd always 24/7. He's always in character and stuff. And his wife, this Joanne Whaley, I think her name is, they just kind of drifted apart. But here's the thing though, they've stayed friends, And even throughout towards his death, they were in each other's lives. I don't think she ever dated, or at least it's not public knowledge that she dated anybody after him. But he had a relationship with his kids and his ex-wife. I mean, how lucky is that?
Yeah, it's definitely rare. I mean, for sure, right? So I mean, it's it's one of those things. You can have everything, you don't have your health, you have nothing. And I think with Val Kilmer, when we see him as a young guy, he seemed. When I say this, I mean this with a certain amount of sincerity. there's certain people like a Brad Pitt you look at, and as a guy, I look at him and go, man, he's not pretty, he's not ugly, he's not handsome, he's just a nice blend. He's beautiful. He is just
Yeah.
gorgeous to me, right? That means nothing about his acting ability. Val Kilmer is not a bad looking guy at all. He's kind of handsome in a boyishly sort of way, right?
Yep.
But the fact that all these pictures you've got up here between Doc Holliday and of course Batman and everything else there too, he looks like a guy that you're like, okay, he's a decent looking guy. He looks like a dude bro, kind of that you might know or go to school with or something or whatever. And you see him in all these different roles. And to me, I think part of his charm and appeal was one, I can't recall other than the occasional story about maybe he's very particular with his acting methods or whatever that might rub some people the wrong way, which method acting does, is that he it just seems like he's approachable, like he gets along well with everybody. I don't know of any bad stories about him. Not that I go looking for it. We don't really talk that kind of stuff. We don't care. But he just seems like a dude that you'd be like, hey man, what's up? Not like, oh my God, it's Charlton Heston, Mr. Heston, can I please get an autograph? If you could even get through his security, right? That's the everyman kind of appeal I think Val Kilmer had, and he's one of the first big guys I think back in the '80s that seemed that way.
Yeah. All right.
So we'll go through some of the comments here.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at, he's a graduated Juilliard, but they're born Val Edward Kilmer. According to Wikipedia says here, he was on December 31st, 1959, Los Angeles. And he stayed in Los Angeles. And that's where he died. 2014 is when he had his cancer, thing. And so he's been dealing with this since 2014, the throat and stuff and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Was last Tuesday. He came down with basic pneumonia, and just basically that's how he died. Second of three sons, Gladys Swanet and Eugene George Kilmer. His mother was Swedish descent, and his father and sister included Irish, German, and Cherokee roots, I guess. Parents divorced 1968 when he was 8 years old. 1970, his mother married another guy, William Bartlett H. Kilmer's grandfather was a gold miner in New Mexico near its border with Arizona. Kilmer was raised with Christian Science beliefs, maintained the general for most of his life. In 1977, tragedy struck when his younger brother Wesley, Hedwig Epsley, drowned in the jacuzzi at age 16. As I mentioned that in his Val movie documentary, his brother is what got him into acting, pursuing all that stuff. His brother they got a video camera, and his brother at the time would direct him through plays. He'd start out plays, and then when his brother died, his dream was to go to Juilliard because it wasn't just his dream; it was his brother's dream to keep it alive.
Well, we saw like some of those clips, right, when we did the documentary review a few years ago when it came out. One of the things about him too is that he's somebody I think that probably knew he was dying and his time was limited, so he's trying to. And I'm trying to say this without a bit of cynicism, but take it because it's a legitimate thought. Is that, hey, with what time I've got left, how do I craft my farewell as far as how I want to be remembered? Not necessarily to the general public, but just to people in general, the people close to him. So, if he was able to squeeze in another film or two based on this health, hey, more power to him. But he struck me as a guy that I liked in that, he just went. There's some actors that just want to work and they'll take any job, whether the movie's good or not, just because they like working and they stay busy. That's cool. There's some people that are too finicky. Then there's some people that try a few different things out. And I remember when Orbital or The Saint came out, Orbital did the soundtrack, and I remember going, "Oh, this is 30 plus years later of shows that were really popular, like Mission Impossible back in the '60s." The Saint was obviously Roger Moore before he became James Bond. So I thought it was an interesting spy movie, and spy movies are a little more spy then, although the turn to James Bond using a lot of guns really kind of started, honestly, with Pierce Brosnan, I think 95, 97, for better or for worse. But I liked it, and I thought, okay, it's a good movie. Hopefully there'll be another one. And there wasn't. And I thought, man, that's been really good at, because when when he's doing those kinds of things where he can use his intelligence and all that, the spy area to me seems a lot better. Now, people like him in Heat. They always talk about the gun shooting and how realistic it is and all that. That's Michael Mann, not Val.
Yep.
But I go, man, I'm trying to say what would have been the perfect franchise or role for Val Kilmer. I mean, everyone loves him in Tombstone, but he stole the show. But I mean, like he's done so many different things. You'd go, oh, he's done the same movie over and over again. I don't think, right?
No. He even voiced Kit in the new 2008 reboot of Knight Rider. I'm looking at this. They didn't credit him, but he was the voice of the car, Kit. That's kind of funny. I never would have expected that. I knew they because remember as Mr. Feeney. I forgot what his real name is, but if I'm Boy Meets World was actually the voice of Kit back in the '80s when David Hasselhoff. And then I'm looking. He was also in Bad Lieutenant, Port of a Call, New Orleans. I mean, is there a sequel to Bad Lieutenant? I thought it was only one.
I don't know.
He was in Kill the Irishman, 2011. Never watched it. That's another movie we got to check out too. There's also
Psych TV show, which I liked.
Yep. Here's something I did not know either. And then back in 2011, Marvel released a Spider-Man game called Edge of Time. Val Kilmer was one of the voices actors in there.
Mm-hmm.
Not a big one, but he was in there. Like, I thought it was kind of cool. Wyatt's Earp's Revenge in 2012. I didn't realize there was a sequel.
Yeah, he's got a lot of films. I didn't realize he made this many of them.
Yeah,
wow.
A lot of them are kind of like 4.0s, 5.2. Breathless,
Dogs.
Riddle. Yeah. 7 Below.
Deja Vu. That's it. That was a great role with Denzel. I remember that. Oh, I like that movie. Yeah.
Oh, was he in Deja? I remember him being Deja Vu. I guess
he was the scientist explaining the time.
Oh yeah. You're right.
And he's good doing that kind of stuff. Yeah.
He was on Entourage for a while, but the one dude, Mindhunters is the one you need to check out. That was a good movie. But a group of psychics that go. I think we might have reviewed it actually. I'm not sure, but I know we talked about it. A group of psychics being hunted by the government basically go to this location to meet up and to fight off and their freedom. Blind Horizon.
I can't take it seriously.
It's okay. Spartan, Stateside, Blind Horizon, The Missing, Masked and Anonymous. I've never heard of that. Hard Cash. And I keep thinking, when I hear Hard Cash, I think of the Hard Rain movie with Christian Slater every single time. Then I realize it's not the same movie. Salton Sea. I heard that was a good movie with Danny. He played Danny Parker and Tom Van Allen in that role. 2002. Pollock was another one he did in 2000. Uh-huh. And wow.
There was somebody who also died. I'm just gonna kind of compare him real quick here.
Yeah.
And there was a guy named Richard Chamberlain who was in the Thornbirds. I think I mentioned this on our last stream. He had just passed maybe that night or something. And so he was a guy that was decent looking, acted in a lot of stuff, but nobody would know about him unless you grew up during that time. So you're going to have a massive catalog like Chamberlain. I'm looking at Val's here like you are, and I didn't realize it was this extensive with, look, I'll say the word stinker because they're movies nobody's ever heard of, but he stayed busy, right? He wasn't just doing
blockbusters, right? Yeah, because if you're not active, you're forgotten.
Yeah. So he's did what he did and all that too. I think it's kind of interesting because I was watching an early 80s movie this week called The Seduction, and it's an erotic thriller that has Morgan Fairchild in it, a beautiful woman, and a guy named Andrew Stevens, who is a smooth guy, and he's a stalker of hers. And that's really all the movie is, and it's really super low budget, whatever. It's one of those late night kind of erotic thrillers. But then when you look at Andrew Stevens, if you didn't grow up in the 70s or 80s and realize, God, this guy's been in a lot of TV shows, the daytime soaps, which, your print money and those things, that's why they're still around. But then he transitioned into like directing and producing sort of stuff. And why am I bringing this up is because the one thing that I always was drawn to is certain actors, whether it's like a Charlton Heston or in this case, you could even say Shatner to some degree, really, even though people think he's all camp, he's a good actor. Val is a smart dude. He did stuff other than act. He would write. He would do this and that. I mean, you mentioned the Mark Twain stuff. Mark Twain's considered the father of American kind of like. If you want to know what American is, read Mark Twain. He had a certain cynicism and humor with him and all that too. Very sharp eye for human nature, especially the American version of it. So it's interesting that he would do something because it takes a certain insight to do that. Val's got it. So Val just wasn't a guy that has done like 200 movies and that's it, and then he dies, and you don't know nothing about him. I mean, he's definitely pretty well-rounded, it seems like, as an individual, and that's rare for Hollywood, especially with the success that he's had.
Yeah, I'm looking to see, they don't even have the movie Val listed as IMDb, unless I'm not looking for the right spot.
Which one?
His documentary he did. I'm not seeing it as IMDb.
Well, they might not consider that the movie. That might be considered something else. So it might be in a different section there.
Yeah, I don't know. But looking at, I was talking to you before we went live. I was watching the movie Heat, and you talking about actors in there was really disturbing. I was watching. I'm like, okay, I know Val Kilmer just died. He's dead. and then pops up Tom Sizemore. I was
Good
just like,
actor.
I know,
And
he's
handle a bottle.
yeah, it's a lot of things, I sat down to watch because I figured I put it off. A lot of people overhype it, so it kind of makes me not want to watch things when people do that. Like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, you gotta watch it. It's like
Everybody
I'm
had a
like,
hard on for Heat.
it's like calm down, guys. I'm watching it, and Val Kilmer is his character is just great in that. Uh, Obviously he's an asshole to his wife and everything. But then again, they're in a dysfunctional marriage.
Yep.
But I mean, like outside of that, he's a safe cracker, all that stuff, the plan, everything. He's calm, collected. Kind of reminds you of kind of like Patrick Swayze in Point Break. A little bit. He knows what needs to be done, and he's a team player. He's loyal to the end. So it's kind of really great to see him in that. But we're talking about character actors. Another one is in there too, popped up, and I was just like, all right, William Fichtner's in there. That's another guy who's pretty much just like Val Kilmer in a sense, where he'll take whatever role it is just to keep working. Yeah. He's never the big star, but he keeps working. And Val Kilmer I think he kind of realized that he's like, I don't need to be the big star for every movie that I'm in. I just want to roll. I want to get paid, and that's it. He loves acting, and the only way you keep acting is if you take jobs. Sure, a lot of duds. We don't know personally. There might have been movies that he liked that were flops. He just he loved that performance he did.
One of these years we're going to be doing, one of these streams, and we never know when someone's going to go. So obviously, there's a lot of older actors, and one I just heard of recently. Obviously, we know him. We've talked about him a lot. Chevy Chase. I go, here's a guy that's uber talented, but he'd waited too late in his career to try to be the straight man or the serious actor.
Yeah.
And we've seen that with a lot of people. Jim Carrey went through that phase where he was just so damn good. Or even, I hate to say it with Mike Myers, I really didn't care much for him, but he followed his magnum opus in the gold member type movies and everything too. So nobody wants to see him do anything else. Yeah, Austin Powers. And, somebody else who's got a lot of talent who's up there, who actually I thought nailed what it meant to do it would be Eddie Murphy. So a lot of these guys were contemporaries and growing up too. And it's nice to see that people back then that were actors, that it's been a lifetime of acting for them. Not that just they were hot for a little bit and that's it.
Eddie Murphy for me, it was like 48 hours, and then him doing another 48 hour. Or they did two of them, right? Or one?
Yeah, well, they did the other one for Netflix last year, I think it was.
Yeah,
and that was good.
That wasn't 48 hours.
Beverly Hills Cop, I'm sorry.
Beverly Hills Cop, though, and I thought that was for me that's the definitive movies he's done. You could say Nutty Professor and all this stuff. I liked him. Yeah. His Axel. Yeah, right.
48 hours.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's Val Kilmer. Like you said, did a lot of roles because he wanted to keep, and he loved acting. And there's not really many actors that actually love acting. Some of them just want to get paid. That's it. They don't care. Now you could say like with the strike that happened like a year ago or two, like we're not getting paid enough or whatever, and you had some, and it wasn't even the actors, it's the Screenwriters Guild, and
the artists and the AI and all that.
Yeah. But honestly, like I said, when it comes to Val Kilmer and a lot of some of these other actors, back in the day, Tom Sizemore, they were just happy, and then they delivered no matter what scene they're in, what role they're in. Tom Sizemore in the and Heat was great, also in Saving Private Ryan. We watch him in that too. Val Kilmer is another high caliber, one of those Juilliard actors from the 80s. Kevin Bacon came out of there too. He was, Tom Hanks. Now, I'm not talking about the people, their personalities, what they've done. I'm just talking about in the movies that they've done. Mm-hmm. That's a whole different story. So I know for those you're like, oh, we hate Tom Hanks. That's great. Cool. But you can't deny that he's a brilliant actor.
Well, I think, obviously mass appeal is one thing. And I think, talent versus, likability. I mean, there's a lot of different things you could look at somebody. The thing with Tom Hanks is I remember him back when he did television. I never liked him. I never thought he was any good. But when he did that comedy movie, two other people in there, where he talks real funny. I forget the name of it, but I thought, man, this is great. And I liked him when he did like the Angels and Demons. Yeah. No, just when he didn't do the Tom Hanks thing of yelling and screaming, I think he's a good actor. When I look at somebody like Val Kilmer, I go, man, he can do both. And I like him when he almost has a little bit of an edge to him, a little bit of a bastard, and he really can handle those roles well. But he blended so well going to this and doing that. So he's almost like a glue guy.
Yeah.
You could say, hey, I want you to do Batman, but I want you to do serious, brooding Batman. Oh, I want you to do campy Batman. You could give him 4 or 5 different ways of doing Batman. He'll go like, yeah, I can do that for you. But how about I give you this version of him?
Mm-hmm.
So not a lot of people can do that. And Val definitely did it. Now, I wanted to ask you, because I'm looking at, obviously you just have some highlights here, some clips of pictures of different movies that he's been in. Out of all these you've posted, the 2 that are jumping out to me that make me either want to rewatch them or review them at some point in the future, my shortlist would be The Ghost in the Darkness and The Saint. I'm curious, what would be the 1 or 2 that you'd think about reviewing, whether it's on this list or not?
Wow, I'm watching happily through watching Heat, but Tombstone definitely is a must to watch. And I also have a thing for Top Gun, but Top Gun is more of a Tom Cruise movie than it is a Val Kilmer movie.
Right.
Even though I would say The Ghost in Darkness, Heat, or Tombstone. You know,
we have reviewed Tombstone. I don't know if we've done Heat or Ghost in the Darkness. I might have done Ghost in the Darkness years ago. It's probably one of those
we've never reviewed Heat, unless you reviewed it with E.
Okay.
But Tombstone's another one we haven't reviewed at all either. You know,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we did, like I said, it was 4 or 5 years ago, and
Yep.
it has less than 30 views, probably.
Right.
But yeah, honestly, we already reviewed Willow on the channel. Professor Pixel hated it. Yeah. I don't know. Willow has a big cult following.
We did do Willow a couple years ago. I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that with Pixel.
And Tombstone we did 4 years ago.
Yeah. Tombstone we'll probably review again, but I'm thinking for Tuesday reviewing Heat. So I'm halfway through it. And I know that's one of your favorite movies.
I'm not saying that. Look, Thief to me crushes Heat. No, they're both Michael Mann films.
Sure.
Of course, that's James Caan as a safecracker. Heat, to me, I'm looking at Heat going, yeah, I've seen this movie already, right? I mean, and I want to see James Caan. These guys, look, I will take an Al Pacino, I will take a Robert De Niro, and I will trade you for a James Caan and a Val Kilmer.
Sir,
I will gladly do that.
I'm curious, if we put a poll up, just 2 movies, Heat or Tombstone for Tuesday, what would you guys even vote for? I'm curious, what would win?
Tombstone. Because all the other
you think so? Because all the other stuff, Hell's Come With Me, Kevin Costner and all stuff. But yeah.
I don't know if Pixel would get Real Men, because I always like to say he's the young 20-something, so I'm still trying to get him into sex comedies from the 80s. Yep. That's a very funny movie. It's a laugh riot. Maybe he'd get it. I don't know. But we always joke about him because, there's no sex in movies anymore.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this as one of the final things to kind of talk about with Val. I think this obviously comes to everybody's mind, not just the documentary or whatever that we talked about in his films. Whether you like the guy, whether or not you think he's the biggest phony, shill, fake, religious guy, Scientology kind of guy with Tom Cruise, damn it, if him, including him in Top Gun 2 and the way they did it, I'm telling you, when I saw it in the theaters, people were weeping. Does Tom Cruise get a lot of credit, or is that just Tom Cruise, just saying, look at me, I did this for Val? It came across as, I thought, exceptionally well done. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that happened. That's something I'll always remember. What do you think about that?
Top Gun Maverick was really great. Him coming back and Tom Cruise honoring him, having him come back, reprise his role, him being because Iceman was a major part of his career, of that film.
Yes.
His character. So at the end, they kind of bond together after they prove each other, and they get together, So it was having him in there, and then the emotional scene, and so if you've not seen Top Gun Maverick, because maybe you're not a big fan of Top Gun Maverick, Val Kilmer's scene steals the movie.
And I'll say this: Top Gun, the '80s movie, I hated it in the '80s because they played that "Take My Breath Away" from Berlin like every 10 minutes. Danger Zone, everybody loves. I mean, let's be honest, it's cute.
I will say though,
the movie's like a jokey gay kind of thing. I don't mind it. It's great 80s propaganda.
You guys complain about that song.
Better.
You guys complain about that song. I would rather listen to those songs than anything today.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Take My Breath Away over Cardi B or whatever. Yeah, I don't care for the last stuff
To
today.
each their own. The point is, Top Gun was going to be a big hit,
Oh, it was
and
a
you
huge
couldn't
hit
stop
because
it.
just like Iron Eagle, this took it a little step further. This actually went onto the aircraft carrier and actually showed you stuff they've never seen before in a movie.
Exactly.
You know, so that really what made it popular. The jokes are so quotable. Movie. You know, it was never meant to be a serious movie. It was more of a cornball movie.
Mm-hmm.
The drama obviously hits when, obviously, for spoiler, if you haven't watched it, someone dies in it that's very close to Maverick, and he blames himself for it, and he nearly washes out of the program, but he finally gets his head on straight, thanks to his hot girlfriend at the time, Kelly Brook, or is it Kelly? Oh, sorry, Kelly McGillis.
Kelly McGillis, yes.
Yeah, Kelly McGillis was with Steven Seagal. Yeah, so yeah, and in the songs, sitting on the dock of the bay, you talk about how his dad was a pilot, never came back home. His mom would sit on there at the porch, listen to that song over and over again.
We've lost to movies the whole bonding aspect of people in
Yeah,
war, and all that too. It's been a
loss and
generation,
stuff.
so you wouldn't see a scene like that now, would you?
So no, not really. You don't get that many movies like that where someone dies and that's very close to them and it affects them, and throws them off in movies. Especially not none of the caliber of acting they had back in the day. Like I said, Doc Holliday in his character as Gil Kilmer's role in Tombstone, he's dying, and he's very loyal to he comes out of his deathbed. He's supposed to be in there, but he's like, no, I'm gonna help Wyatt Earp. He's sitting there up against a tree, and you can tell. You can look at the face right there. He look all his basically his kidneys are shutting down, and everything,
Yeah.
and he's barely holding up. And then he literally gets the tree, and the guy thinks he's gonna, oh, you're just dead, and they just shoots him, and then he kind of stumbles, because he's I'm gonna die on my feet, not on the bed. That was his thing.
I've always said that the first Transporter movie with Jason Statham, he had like the 3 rules, like don't look at the merchandise, always be on time, whatever, and all that.
Yeah.
And then it kind of degenerated and all that too. Still kind of cute, but the first one I thought was interesting. I like how you mentioned with Tombstone how he prizes loyalty, because when you know what a character is about, at least a particular thing that they value, and you see how their behavior, whether it's consistent or not with their actions about that, like him saying, no, he's my boy and da 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 da. That's an interesting place to be, where you go, okay, let's take somebody that like values loyalty like him. Let's make it very difficult for him. Let's integrate him into there. So you're watching like this own, like, it's not, I hate to say subplot because it's not, but you're watching the character unfold as it goes on, right? And it is a remarkable performance from him too. I would say Heat, Ghost in the Darkness, and Tombstone, make it a 3-way poll. Let's see how that goes. Just out of curiosity, I think Tombstone wins by a mile. Heat probably comes in second, and Ghost in the Darkness in third. But let's see what the audience thinks, and we can.
Well, I'll just say this: for those who don't know, Heat is like a 3-hour movie.
Mm-hmm.
I was not expecting that, so I was watching. I got halfway through it, 2 hours into it. I only have an hour left. It's on Netflix right now. You can check that out.
Okay.
I'm not sure about Tombstone where that's playing, or even if Ghost of the Darkness is even on stream anywhere. That might be a Prime. But honestly, if you don't have any of these movies on DVD or Blu-ray, pick them up. Tombstone, fantastic movie. You should have a physical media for that. Same with Ghost of the Darkness. Heat is a movie that I don't really see it out for reprinted physical media as much.
I'm seeing it on Pluto TV free here in the United States.
For which one is that?
Ghost in the Darkness.
Yeah. But I mean, when's the last time you've seen Heat available at Walmart and Steelcase or stuff? You don't really don't see that. I see Willow all the freaking time. Or like Tombstone or Batman, because it's part of a collection. And same with Top Gun. I just feel like Heat was really talked about, but I don't think it sells well.
It's like this. If you like Michael Mann's movies, and of course Miami Vice, he's the guy that incorporated the different part of movies, and that there's a feel and a vibe to it, and that's it. The other stuff doesn't matter. So here it's really all about like the chase between these two dudes, Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, and everyone's like, oh my God, they're gonna, and you give Michael Mann a vibe to it. You throw in Val Kilmer and some other stuff and all that. Holy shit, that's gonna be it.
There are
But
scenes
like
that pop.
Collateral, it's a vibe. It's not a story. It's a
There are
vibe.
scenes I love it pop because like once the cops are on to them, and then someone's as they're breaking into this place, Robert De Niro's outside. He's kind of sitting in the corner watching, making sure there's there's a lookout. And then one of the sniper or SWAT guys in the undercover trailer, like semi truck trailers off across the street in the parking lot, sits down and his gun hits the thing, and then all of a sudden they're watching the camera, and Al Pacino and Robert De Niro like, because Robert De Niro heard it. He's like, "What the fuck is that?" So they go in. He tells them we're walking. They get out of there, and then so they know there's someone's watching them. They gets word from John Voight. You guys are hot right now. You should walk away and stuff. And then there's a scene is when so they like the guys get all together and they meet up at this scrap heap junkyard kind of like thing industrial park and mineral shipping containers, and they talk about, they decide what they're gonna do. I love it because that scene right there is so great. They have like a bonding thing,
Yes.
loyalty. I love it. And Val Kilmer is like, "Hey, Robert, I need this job one more time and walk away and stuff. I just need this. And they turn to Tom Sizemore. He's like, "Dude, you've got stuff put away. You have a wife and kids and stuff. You can go. You don't need to be in this." Tom Sizemore is like, "Hey, you know what? But the juice comes from there." He says like, "Basically, I'm in. I'm like the adrenaline." So the brotherhood. Danny Trejo is like, "Hell yeah, brother, I'm in too." So then they leave. So then, like, the cops show up and they're like, "Well, what were they looking at here?" And then and Al Pacino finally like, "Oh fuck, we got made. They're watching us right now." They pan out on there and you see Robert De Niro with the camera taking pictures, zooming in. It's such a great, well done scene by scene movie. It's a little long. And the only thing that ruins it for me, as I'm watching right now halfway through, is Al Pacino's overacting, and I love how that became like a skit on SNL.
Yeah, he just starts shouting his lines.
Yeah,
like when he's getting a little deaf and doesn't know it or something.
Like he's trying to throw his weight around because he's such a short guy. He's like he starts coming out comedian as like Joe Pesci in the movie. I was just like, I can't take him serious. It's like what was it? What was it? The Godfather, or what was it one where he was like the little guy and it was a Reservoir Dogs? He's the mobster and he's trying to tell people, intimidate them. His judge, and like you said, like it just came off so like weird. It was a weird choice to have him shout his lines.
It reminds me of an episode of T.J. Hooker where there's like a serial killer called the Mumbler.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw it out there because I keep wanting to do T.J. Hooker one day.
We will. So yeah, I mean, we got thrown a curveball here. We're thinking about doing another TV series and thinking about going into Miami Vice.
Yep.
Like I said, Val Kilmer suddenly dying out of nowhere, age 65. We were like, we can't not talk about Val Kilmer.
Yep. Yeah. You can't. Yeah.
It killed me. I was like, I wanted to go live that Tuesday night.
I know, right?
Like, grab, get out of bed. We're going live. And this waiting this Sunday, I was just like, oh man, he said such a brilliant actor, very nice man. Desert Rose in the chat's bringing up his paintings. He would sell his paintings stuff.
Yep.
Lived next door to his daughter at a townhouse side by side. Just very loving, and just honorable man. He said going, and then we watch a movie Val. Documentary. He's going to they're having these shows. We can watch outdoor theater. They're watching his movies, and he's just so touched by because I never thought this many people actually gave a damn.
People liked him.
Yeah,
I mean, growing up as a kid, people just liked him from day one. He was hard not to like.
The guy was and that's the thing. He's like. A lot of us are like, we get that mindset, like, oh, no one's gonna come out washed up, especially you come real high up being an actor doing this stuff, and then you're dropped down low because of something like cancer. Your depression just goes to the roof, and everything. So him being there, and even though he can barely talk, he's like, he kind of laughs. He's like, yeah, my voice sounds really fucked up. I love it. I love it. But he says, like, he starts crying because he says, like, I never expected anybody to give a damn about me. I'm one of those guys, I never wanted to be. a guy who goes to conventions for movies he did 10 years ago and hasn't done anything since then. One of those has-been actors and long forgotten. He just sits there and he's like, I was just so overwhelmed. There's so many people every summer. They're so nice. There's people who dress up, and the characters and stuff. It's kind of creepy, but it's also touching at the same time. It's like, so, and yeah, the guy is very, very open. He had a really big heart, and he said he was a good father. He may not have been a good husband. We don't know the full story there, but we know that they didn't marriage work out, but they worked out being friends and supporting each other as the years went on.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other final thoughts, sir?
Final thoughts, man. If you have not seen any Val Kilmer movies, or you should be checking it out. I know people are like, I don't want to watch Batman Forever. It looks hokey. Check it out, because Val Kilmer is seen in there along with Nicole Kidman. They're always fun. Top Gun is I love him being his Iceman, because he's just so ooze he's got masculinity, and he's got the huge ego, an Iceman. I'm gonna get you, it's up. I love that shit. Heat, he's kind of psychotic. The Saint, he's the suave. If you like Bruce Wayne from Batman Forever, you have that in the Saint. He's a suave thief, pretty much spy. Tombstone, he's like the confidence. He's the ladies' man. He's they'll shoot you dead, pretty much. He's the real deal, real genius. He's kind of one of his first roles. He's just kind of like the Van Wilder, a little bit. Not to say not like the extent, but he's the smartest one there, and he just wants to have fun. And yeah, he gets into trouble with I think it was the government or something like that. So hijinks. So, and yeah, I said, like, all around and Ghost in the Darkness, I think this is another serious role. So, like I said, if there's a movie that you guys have loved, like your favorite movie of Val Kilmer that we have not reviewed on this channel, and you think that we should do it, let us know down in the comment section down below. We'll check it out. Obviously, I want to start going into more some of Val's catalog and go exploring some of the other ones that not really talked about a lot. I said, Kissing and Bang Bang is very popular, but I want to talk about what the hell's a snowman? He did that in 2017. He was Cinema Twain wasn't one he did. That was his thing he was doing, right. Mark Twain. But I want to talk about Life's Too Short. That was a TV series he did. He did an episode. Or even Deep in the Heat, or some of these other, Kill the Irishman. Honestly, I just want our Gun, Bloodworth, Double Identity, all his low budget movies. I think we should give him appropriate reviews.
Yeah. Sometimes we're getting a low budget kick, and that's definitely the right thing.
Thunderheart's on the list. It made the list.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back on track on Tuesday. We'll get a pull up here soon and all that too. So I want to thank everybody that showed up tonight for Val. Also, we had a lot of people take a look at our recent TV drop, which has been very consistently the Sherlock Holmes Granada TV series from 1984. You can find that free on Pluto TV and some others there as well. It's exceptional writing, great acting, phenomenal, best portrayal of Sherlock Holmes, in my opinion. Professor Pix and I are doing that too. So till we see you guys next time, have a good night, and as always, stay extreme.
Say what? Extreme!